Well, all good things must come to an end, and of course, being wrestling, good is mighty subjective as we are here in the final week of HulkaMAYnia.
I wanna be a HulkaManiac. I thought with my Kenyan friends.
This week's episode is truly the end of a lot of things. As a matter of fact, it is the end of Hulk Hogan's big nostalgic championship run. It is the end of the WWF era, and we are going into a brand new time period with a brand new set of initials as we go into WWE Judgment Day 2002 from May 19th at the Gaylord Entertainment Center in Nashville, Tennessee. The show was nominated by Jimmy Kowaleski, Fergus Jeffs, Mikey McIndrow, and Jason Young over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. That's right, this is officially the first pay-per-view event under the World Wrestling Entertainment banner. It's hard to believe that the company has now been known as WWE for longer than it's been known as the WWF, but that is what happened around this time. The wrestling company, the World Wrestling Federation, lost a lawsuit to the World Wildlife Fund. There had originally been an agreement over the use of the WWF initials, but once the wrestling WWF violated the terms of that lawsuit, that caused this chain of events to happen. And so WWE leaning more into the entertainment aspect that they always say they are by getting rid of Federation and replacing it with entertainment. And you know what? It happened, 23 years ago. But even now, fans are still grappling with this change. There are some fans today who still refuse to call it the WWE. They're, outsiders. It's only recently now, in the last couple of years, I feel, where people who are not wrestling fans and they want to start a conversation with you, they would say, "Oh yeah, I used to watch the WWF," or "Yeah, I watched, I hear about WWF stars like John Cena and everything." And only now people are finally, that's finally stuck with people and they call it WWE. I was always really impressed with the turnaround time of those "Get the F Out" spots. That was the big ad campaign they did to usher in the new initials, like the commercial where the woman sets her topiary on fire, gets the F out, or the guy with the big WWF logo head getting the F shaved off and whatnot. That was a pretty clever way to, remind people about the name change. I thought those spots were pretty funny. Kind of surprising in doing my research to be reminded that the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, had only died one day before this pay-per-view. I was kind of surprised that, at least in the version I'm watching here, I forget if they did any kind of tribute on screen for him for this pay-per-view, because I don't think they mention on commentary anything about him passing, and they don't open the show with any kind of tribute to him. And that would have been kind of awkward, though, because the opening hype package for this show features a lot of imagery of death. There's, nooses and gallows and spooky kids. Fred Blassie's voice is narrating. You see this swinging dead body. Jesus, this is grim. And the theme of the show is Tombstone Mania. So yeah, maybe not the best choice to include mentioning, this real life death of somebody who was part of our organization for several years. After we get a live hit from The World, that's the WWF New York restaurant's new name, we go to our opening matchup. It is for the Intercontinental title as Eddie Guerrero takes on Rob Van Dam. This is a rematch from what they did at the previous pay-per-view. That's right, this is Backlash from Backlash. Eddie, who won the belt last month, he's getting all hot and bothered in the early going after Van Dam's able to outpace him. A great moment where Rob fakes out Eddie with a flying move, turns into a split-legged moonsault. I loved that. There's this hilarious exchange on commentary where Jerry Lawler briefly forgets words.
I think Van Dam saw too many of those movies about people kicking each other. What are those movies called? Martial arts movies? Oh, okay.
Rob is fighting for the surfboard. It's so cool to see them struggle to get there. This turns into a great sequence all on its own. Eddie cuts Rob off and slows it down. I love how JR puts over all the Guerrero family legacy while Eddie's getting his heat. There's a unique shoulders into the back situation by Van Dam in the corner. Some more great stuff as he makes his comeback, dropping Eddie right on the rope. Both men go for frog splashes, but they both miss. They have this face-off. They both hit the ropes. Big collision explosion in the center of the ring. Eddie turns around and catches this RVD kick, turns it into a backslide, feet on the ropes at the very last second. Eddie wins and retains the title. I'm going to give this 5 stars out of 5. I loved this matchup. It built up so much from what they did the previous month at Backlash and made it even better. I was seeing some sequences and some counters I had never seen before, or not done quite as well as what these two had. They had a great chemistry, and these guys have a wonderful rapport with each other. They're going to have a ladder match to blow this rivalry off on Raw a week or two after this, and I think the only thing I remember most about that is like in the middle of it, some fan like storms the ring and like pushes Eddie off the ladder, and I remember Eddie being interviewed about that after the fact, and he was thinking like, wait, is there some angle I forgot about? Is there some new wrestler coming in? Backstage, the recently repackaged Reverend Devon and the recently debuted Deacon Batista are praying with Mr. McMahon and Stacy Keibler. They're praying for Sister Stacy's safety and praying for a victory over Trish Stratus, and Vince is telling them to wrap this shit up, and he's asking Devon about, hey, Bubba Ray's not going to be here, is he? And then Devon's like, I personally spoke to Bubba Ray and warned him if he shows up, there will be hell to pay. And well, we'll find out if that's true in this women's title match as Trish Stratus defends against Stacy Keibler. I love the sound of Jerry. He just like yelps when he sees just a shot of a Trish Stratus poster in the crowd. So Stacy Keibler is Mr. McMahon's personal assistant. She got the job in a very famous moment that was later turned into a meme. Stacy drew the ire of Trish last week on SmackDown when Trish barged in on the swimsuit competition that Stacy was in and won. How dare she? Then we hear, oh, testify! And we hear this organ music to represent Reverend Devon and Batista coming out. I was a little bummed that we didn't get the Reverend Devon theme that he would later get that like kicks all sorts of ass. You know which one I'm talking about, where the lady's going, he's calling my name! He's calling my name! So Devon and Batista are at ringside. Then Bubba Ray Dudley comes out, and like I mentioned in the Backlash review, once the Dudleys split up in the draft, he became a hardcore champion, doing a bit of a singles run, palling around with Trish Stratus. So that is how we got to this point. If you're just tuning in, why the Dudleys are split, why one of them is a Reverend, and they're each hanging out with a different blonde lady. Trish and Stacy are actually putting on a bit of a clinic early on, a lot of back and forth covers, Trish kicking Stacy out of the dang old ring. Bubba laughs in Stacy's face, which gets him slapped, and ooh, Bubba's getting mad now. That distraction allows Batista to hit a big old body slam on Trish in the ring. Somehow that is not the end of the match. Trish fires back. She provokes, as JR calls, Deacon Batista. He gets on the apron. Stacy accidentally decks the Deacon. That allows Trish to hit the Bulldog for the win. Then after the bell, we get this face-off with the Dudleys. It looks like they're going to have a handshake. Batista interjects. Bubba disposes of him, but then bam, Devon hits his half-brother. He seems to regret what he did, though. He's showing some remorse, and then like a moment later, he's like, nah, Batista, get the tables. And so the Deacon Batista gets the table out. They splat him through it. Oh, Stacy's back now. They do the arms thing, and Batista goes, yeah! I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. It's a good story, albeit a very quick one. They were able to fit a lot into there, and not a ton of time given to it, but they certainly didn't screw anything up. And really the match itself, I think, was just more to help build up the Dudleys angle, since they spent, I think, almost as much time on that as they did the match itself. And it's weird because this doesn't really go anywhere, because Bubba and Devon are on separate brands. I guess if anything, it really just kind of like puts the exclamation point on Devon being a baddie now, but even that doesn't really matter, because by the end of this year, in 2002, Bubba and Devon will reunite. We see the Raw owner Ric Flair and his buddy Arn Anderson hanging out. Mr. McMahon walks in, kind of shades of what happened the previous month at Backlash, but unlike the last encounter when Flair was very defensive and angry at Vince, now he's seen the light and they're shaking hands, and Flair says, Vince, you were right all along. Austin is an asshole, but he says, unlike Vince, he's going to take Austin out. Vince gives him a hug, but he makes a face about it. Up next, Matt and Jeff, the Hardy Boys, take on Brock Lesnar and his tag team partner, Paul Heyman. Yes, you heard that right. One of the big developments right now is that Lita has actually suffered a neck injury. She broke her neck while on the set of the Fox TV show Dark Angel, and that would put her out of action for more than a year. And it really, talk about a big what if. in wrestling during this time, because think of how different, not just her career, but I think the greater wrestling scene in the WWF, the women's wrestling scene, I should say, how different that would have been had Lita stayed healthy when she was really on that run, and when they're starting to put a bit more of an emphasis on women and women's championship for the first time in about a year, because they really didn't touch it during the Invasion storyline. And so for her to be out like this, yeah, that's really gonna impact not just the Hardy Boys, not just her own career, but I think a lot of things in terms of the WWF at large. And so yeah, definitely a huge what if had Lita stayed healthy, because I think her career would have turned out very differently. Meanwhile, the Hardys are continuing their angle with Lesnar, who recently debuted. Paul Heyman got Brock DQ'd on Monday, and he challenged Matt and Jeff to a tag team match where he himself would wrestle. The Hardys jump Lesnar at the onset, they corner Heyman, but Brock's back on them as the match officially begins. Lesnar is this no-necked one-man army just clubbing away on the Hardys as Heyman cackles with glee in the corner. Matt is able to hit a DDT to tag in Jeff. We get some double teaming by the Hardys. Heyman is hiding somewhere, and one of my favorite things about this matchup is Jim Ross, and he's on fire with a lot of interesting, notable lines on commentary throughout this show, but his descriptors of Paul Heyman are especially funny. He describes Heyman at one point as a living, breathing septic tank. Heyman gets thrown into the ring, his hat falls off, and the King just goes nuts. Look at his head! Look at his head! Like he's got a better hairline than your current undisputed champion, Lawler. Lesnar to the rescue once again. He throws Jeff into Matt, hits the F5 onto Jeff. Heyman begs for a tag in. JR calls him a walking grease trap. He gets the tag, stumbles into the ring, covers Jeff, and wins for his team. I'm going to give it 1.5 stars out of 5. It's another Lesnar squash match, which looks really impressive, and then you've got that extra added bit of heat for Paul Heyman, being involved and getting the cover to win and everything. It feels like you could have milked more out of this match, but, you really got to keep your Lesnar exposure at this point, I would say, pretty short. And, Paul Heyman getting involved physically and stuff would not carry over for very long for his run with Lesnar, I don't think, because I don't think he does get the occasional match in on SmackDown when he's general manager later on, but as far as him getting involved in the match and being a partner of who he's managing, I'm pretty sure that never happens again. Backstage, the new member of the New World Order, Booker T, is in the promo zone. What an odd visual that is, seeing him wearing an NWO shirt. Booker was recruited to join the group because at this point, the NWO is in shambles. People are dropping left and right to injuries and firings. We got to bring some numbers back in. We need some kids, as Tads might have said at one point. So Flair has turned heel on Steve Austin. He's working with the NWO, not necessarily joining them, but he's just kind of giving them a lot of leeway to beat up Austin. And so 1 week on Raw, he's putting Austin in a lumberjack match with the new member of the NWO. It's going to be revealed right then and there. And so Booker T, his name is called. He just gets in the ring and they have a match. It's very rare to hear an audible, huh, kind of noise from the crowd when you hear a decision made. But that, I think, is what happened when Booker was chosen. And back then, I was like, this is weird. Why is Booker T in this storyline with the NWO? Again, someone who he fought the NWO a lot in WCW, so it's really weird that he would be aligned with them, especially not even by choice. Just Ric Flair puts him in that spot. And it does make sense when you look at the greater arc of Booker T, and especially his tag team partner at the time, Goldust, because they've been teaming as of late, becoming kind of a fun, odd couple team. Booker's being pulled away. Goldust wants him back, and, just pay attention to the story. We'll see where it goes. He's in the promo zone talking about how business is business, but before he can even finish talking, he is totally distracted by this sexy lady who's standing behind the camera. Hey, let me stop doing my promo. Let me stop doing my job to hit on this random woman. And she gives him a key to her hotel room. Ooh, boy. And we go from that to this, a handicap match where Stone Cold Steve Austin has to take on the owner of Raw, Ric Flair, and his friend in the NWO, the recently returned Big Show. So like I mentioned, Flair's turned heel on Austin after he got beat up one too many times. I love Flair's rationale in this promo where he's like, you should have gotten down on your knees to kiss my ass and we would have been best friends. So he aligned himself with the NWO, which seems very very weird when you consider the greater, narrative of Flair and the NWO in the past. The Big Show returns to action. He's joined the group. He's dyed his hair and his goatee black to really, blend in with the theme. And his whole gripe is, 2 years ago, I was in the main event of WrestleMania, and now I'm in the restaurant saying, WrestleMania, baby! Woo! You understand? I'm a giant. So we don't get the one-on-one match with Flair and Austin, not on pay-per-view anyway, because we're going to get that a few weeks later after this on Raw. But here we have Flair teaming with the Big Show. I get it's to help put him over as, returned. But it always just struck me as very weird to see Flair working with the Big Show and with the NWO. It just didn't make any sense to me here. And also, a little weird is the especially deep cut on the Big Show's singlet this month. Very low for him. More great JR-isms in this matchup, in the introductions, where he describes Big Show as having the strength and intelligence of a government mule. He asks about Ric Flair, is he a bitter legend emotionally searching for the past? And one of my favorites here about Austin is he describes him as a man voted most likely to assault a fellow human being. Is that really a high school superlative? Austin's working quick in the early going. He's able to get back and forth on each guy. His stamina is up. He's changing focus at the right times. He starts bringing chairs into the ring, but referee Charles Robinson gets in his face about it. Then we get a whole lot of stalling, and it's also kind of quiet in the ring until at one point Flair takes a backdrop and just goes, ah! Oh my God, this feels like a house show match. Just a bunch of shtick and stalling. The Big Show cuts off Austin and Flair takes over. Flair with this blatant low blow right in front of the referee, even when he tries to fake it, and we hear Big Show with this evil laugh. Ha 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 ha.
Then connects with a low blow that went completely undetected by this.
Flair's got some gyrations going on. He's got the figure four on Austin. The rattlesnake tries to escape, but Big Show just flattens him with the elbow. Austin and Flair are trading shots. Austin puts his own figure four on. Big Show leg drops him to break the hold. Flair's just by himself, but he just sits there going, for a while. Austin with a super Thez press to take down the Big Show. Regular type for Flair. X-Pac shows up. Remember him? We get a stunner to Show, stunner to X-Pac, then one to Flair. Austin wins and defeats WCW. I think one of the most persistent what-ifs of this time period in the WWF, WWE, is why didn't we get Steve Austin versus Hulk Hogan? Man, they were there at the same time. We got Hogan versus Rock instead. That wasn't everybody's first choice. Ooh, Hogan versus Austin would have been way better. No. Between this match and Backlash, I am supremely confident that this Steve Austin fighting that Hulk Hogan would have been the drizzling shits. You want to think about how much bullshit they needed to throw in to protect Austin against The Undertaker the previous month and against Flair and the Big Show at Judgment Day. No, sir. I would not have wanted. I thought you should pay me for a Steve Austin Hulk Hogan match instead of me having to pay to watch that. We get Michael Cole and Taz up in a press box. They're here to talk about hair versus hair, Edge versus Kurt Angle. We see the barber making his way to the barber station. Looks like he's having a hard time finding a comfortable position to sit in. So it's time for the big blow-off match between these two young studs. It's hair versus hair as Edge takes on Kurt Angle. Edge, of course, that merry prankster, he sabotaged Kurt Angle's big t-shirt unveiling a couple weeks ago by putting out the You Suck shirt. A week later, Kurt shows off his original idea for the shirt, and honestly, it's no better. In fact, I think both shirts are objectively terrible, but only one of them was actually sold. In my opinion, no Angle shirt was ever going to beat the original. It's true. It's true. So both men are putting their hair on the line, and gosh, do you think the guy who's clearly balding is going to win this one? Awesome pair of moves here. First, Edge spears Kurt while he's tied up in the ropes, and then Kurt gets untied, suplexes Edge over the ropes to the floor. Kurt continues to wear down Edge, keeping him contained. I love this one line from JR, very kind of old school, kind of territory line, talking about the hair matches. And yeah, if Edge loses his hair tonight, women will be weeping, because all those ladies, they love the long-haired baby faces. Edge makes a big comeback, nice drop kick to Angle's leg, sending him to the floor. He follows up with a big dive, reaching into his bag of risks, as JR says. Edge blocks the run-up suplex by Kurt, hits a very pretty missile drop kick, a very close kick out. The height of the German suplex that Kurt hits on Edge here. Commentary busting out the hair jokes left and right. Angle manages to get that big suplex off the top rope. Still cannot put Edge away. Edge lays out the referee with a huge spear, one of the best Edge ever hit. Kurt then hits an all-time German on Edge. Kurt grabs the chair, he walks into another spear, but the referee is still down and out. Edge with yet another spear, and the referee recovers, he makes the count, kick out at 2.99. Angle with his own spear, the angle slam, the cover, the kick out. How in the hell? Kurt with the ankle lock on Edge. Edge pushes out of it, he catches Kurt in a roll-up. Edge with the win. Kurt tries to jump Edge afterward, but the Edgester hits the DDT and knocks Kurt out. He drags him to the barber platform. We think we're going to see some hair falling, but Kurt manages to escape. I also give it 5 stars out of 5. I loved this match, and very similar to Guerrero and RVD, I love how they took a match from the previous month, which was already good on its own, and really elevated it. Just fantastic storytelling in this match, great athleticism. These guys are the present and the future of the company, and so it's really cool to see him get their moment to shine here. But what of Kurt's hair? We will find out a little bit later on. Meanwhile, at the Marriott, Booker T is in a room and ready to get busy with this random lady he met at the arena. Let's turn the lights off, baby, but surprise, Goldust is here, and he wants Booker T to leave the NWO and come back to him. And he said he plotted this whole elaborate scheme to get to Booker. Booker leaves in frustration with his whole ass hanging out. I loved this storyline, Booker T and Goldust. I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but man, the odd couple stuff with these guys was so good. Legitimately, the Booker Goldust angle is like what kept me into Raw at this time, because there wasn't much else going on that I liked, and so the humor and the comedy these two had working with each other was so funny. Like the bit with, at the movies and Booker T and Goldust at the 7-Eleven and stuff like this. And then like when Booker eventually is kicked out of the NWO and reunites with Goldust, it's a really cool moment. Up next, Heck in a Sec as Triple H takes on Chris Jericho. This is a WrestleMania rematch. Of course, these two fought in the main event at Mania 18. Triple H beating Jericho after coming back from his big injury to become the Undisputed Champion. And so in that time since, Jericho's been wanting revenge on Triple H. And meanwhile, Mr. McMahon, who is the head of SmackDown, he also wants to punish his soon-to-be ex-son-in-law. This is the kind of Chris Jericho we should have had in the build-up to WrestleMania. This like angry, vindictive, violent Chris Jericho, not the shitty chicken heel that we got, in the build-up to Mania. These guys are brawling and tearing at each other from the beginning. Trips is the first one to use the cell as a weapon, throwing Chris into those walls. Chris is bleeding from the shoulder at this point. Kind of reminds me of like in the WWF Attitude and the ECW Acclaim games where people would just bleed from random spots all over their bodies, like on their thigh for some reason. Jericho slingshots H over the steps and into the wall. That looked like a lot more work than necessary and didn't really add anything to it, but hey, you know what? The H-Man loves his slingshot bumps. Jericho brings a ladder into the equation and blasts Triple H with it a couple of times. Jim Ross says that the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla is presiding over the Supreme Court of Gut Checks, which that is a mouthful in and of itself, but also he is really trying to get that phrase over to describe the cell, the Supreme Court of Gut Checks. He'll say it at least 1 or 2 more times in this matchup. Jim, I'm sorry, it's not getting over. Triple H fights back, he hucks the steps at Jericho, he throws Chris into referee Tim White, who flies off the apron into the cell wall and crashes down onto the floor. Jericho beats him up for good measure, and it's pretty sad because this is the spot which Tim White suffers a shoulder injury, and it never gets better. So this is not the last match Tim White would have. He would have one final one years later, but this was the last of his full-time refereeing in WWF because of this matchup. The other referees break into the cell with the aid of bolt cutters to help White. Meanwhile, the H-Man produces Sledgy. He dinks Jericho with it. He goes for the cover, but no one's available to count. Jericho crawling out of the ring. He slams the cell door into Triple H's face. They're brawling around the outside. The Spanish announce table getting all kinds of messed up. Jericho's got evil intentions on that table, but H turns it into a DDT and the table breaks. The Supreme Court of Gut Checks! Triple H has now brought out the barbed wire tube 2x4. Jericho is scurred, climbing up the cell, running for the hills. H follows him up with the weapon. Jericho, though, uses it first. We get the walls of Jericho on the roof of the cell. The referee follows them up. More back and forth. Jericho powers out of the pedigree. Triple H with a big old dink between the eyes of the 2x4. We get a cover on the roof and a near fall. We do get a pedigree on the roof of the cell, the cover, and the 3 count. Triple H wins. Of course, if this were the video games, by now they would have done enough moves where somebody goes through that cell ceiling, but that does not happen here. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. I think it's another great matchup. They're really coming at you on this card with a lot of big matches and a lot of big names. As a fan then, I was fairly disappointed that Jericho didn't win here, because I was thinking, if he doesn't win this one, then he's never going to beat him. And that's pretty much what happened, because I think that Jericho, I don't think he ever won a feud with Triple H, and he certainly didn't win any blow-offs. And so this one was a bit disappointing to me as a young fan at the time. Meanwhile, Kurt Angle is still on the run. He almost gets away from Edge too. Meanwhile, Maven and Torrie Wilson are hanging out together at the World, sharing a giant margarita. And Torrie says she feels so liberated now that she's not dating Tajiri. She can wear what she wants, or nothing at all. Awooga! Well, it's the second to last match of the night, which means it's time for the tag team titles to be defended as Billy and Chuck, accompanied by Rico, defend against Rikishi and a mystery partner to be picked by Mr. McMahon momentarily. And it's Rico! And the fans are confused, and Rikishi looks unimpressed. Rikishi is fending off both Gunn and Palumbo, Rico unwilling to tag in. Rikishi still holding his own, does an invisible cutter to Gunn. Rico accidentally kicks Chuck in the face. Rikishi kicks his own partner, pins Chuck to win the match. So Rikishi and Rico are the new tag team champs, so whatever plan Mr. McMahon had for the boys to triple team Rikishi totally blows up in their face, and he celebrates by himself with his hat and his tag team title belt. And they say on commentary, this is going to be an interesting journey for Rikishi and Rico. Nope, because by the end of next week on SmackDown, I'm pretty sure Billy and Chuck regain the belts. And this is never mentioned again. I give the match 1 star out of 5. It just feels like another handicap match with slightly different ingredients and stakes from earlier. It's a contrived angle because, I don't know, it feels like, okay, McMahon is helping Rico and the champions by doing this, but the announcers don't really sell it that way, and it's not like the match really goes any length of time to help tell that story, because Rico really does nothing. He accidentally kicks his guy, and that's it. And so, you think you would get some kind of angle out of this where, unlikely champions, and Rico's trying to screw Rikishi and whatnot, and that doesn't even go very long. They drop the belts right back to Billy and Chuck immediately after this. Never comes up again. It just seemed like a weird road bump for these champs to take, because beyond that, there's really not much going on with them. Meanwhile, Edge is still on the search for Angle. Kurt jumps him and brings him out to the barber's area. I like how the barber's getting the sheet ready. Yeah, that's really important right now, guy. Edge fights out and locks the sleeper in on Angle, knocking him out. Edge is going to use some shears, but they don't work. Here comes some backup shears, and those definitely work. The crowd is chanting the na na na, hey hey, goodbye song, but they haven't gotten clever enough yet to turn goodbye into you're bald. And man, they're doing the whole job too. They're doing the shears, the gel, the straight razor. I was kind of hoping we get kind of like a Rabbit of Seville moment where Edge is going na 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 na. And then Edge afterwards says, instead of chanting, you suck, now the fans will chant, you're bald. And that doesn't really stick, but it works for that night. And it's just a crazy moment here where Kurt is weeping as he is looking in his reflection in a shattered mirror. Wow, you could really build some twisted storyline logic out of that. And it's a great moment. And even better is how Kurt plays it off in the weeks to come, because he's going to wear the wrestling headgear with the wig on it and, maintain that he never lost his hair. And then after this, he and Hulk Hogan are going to have a feud. And that's when Angle, I should say. You wish that Hulk would do it, but no, Angle embraces the baldness. And speaking of Hulk, we go to our main event as Hollywood Hulk Hogan defends the Undisputed Championship against The Undertaker, a rematch from Survivor Series 1991. It was back at Backlash when The Undertaker won the #1 contendership. He's been on a mission to destroy HulkaMAYnia ever since. He beats Hogan at one point with his own weight belt and using the buckle as like a knuckle. That was really brutal looking. One of Hogan's big acts of revenge, which is hilarious, is like he steals the Undertaker's motorcycle, and then like he's cutting this promo. Undertaker is on stage, and then Hogan's like, I'm gonna chase you with the bike, brother. And like, so he gets on the bike, it's stalling, he can't get it to go, and Taker's just like, oh, you don't, no, don't you get me. And he's just like having a stall and sell for Hogan, who is just like drowning out there trying to get this bike to go. And it will not go, to the point where like they cut away to the announcers to try and kill time. Meanwhile, someone is there fixing the bike so Hogan can like go run up the ramp after Taker, because they got this whole angle they gotta have where Hogan brings the bike to a semi-truck and he runs it over. And then the following week, Taker drags Hogan around the arena by the ankles on his bike, which looked hilarious. This is some amazing build. Like I mentioned in my Backlash review, I was definitely awash in the nostalgia of HulkaMAYnia at this point, and I was really swept up in that push for Hogan after WrestleMania. I thought that him coming out to Jimi Hendrix was really cool, and yeah, I thought it was neat. But then after he won the title, it definitely felt like, you know, Hogan in the ring and cutting the promos, it's, you know, something's not clicking, you know? It feels like not every match can be Hogan and Rock. And, you know, I will say this, Hogan in 2002 is kind of a fascinating run because he really works with everybody. It's not just like the main event guys. It's not just, you know, Rock and Undertaker. You know, he's working with Kurt Angle. He's working alongside Edge. He's wrestling, you know, Lance Storm and Christian. He wrestles Ric Flair. He wrestles William Regal. He wrestles Chris Jericho. He is just like all over the place as a wrestler during this comeback run. And I do think it's pretty fascinating to see him do that. And of course, there's Brock Lesnar as well. It's like he's really just running the gamut of like where he is on the card and the stars he's wrestling and everything. But yeah, him as champion, I felt, even watching it back, it's like, it's not quite hitting the way you hope it to, and it just definitely feels like it sticks out amongst the rest of what they were trying to tell you after Mania 18. But it is a very interesting run, and it feels like the moment of him having won the belt is far more interesting than the reign itself. Taker is wearing one of Hogan's weight belts to the ring. He jumps Hulk before the bell rings and whips him relentlessly with it, but then Hogan fights back, gets his own whipping in, then they ring the bell. Hogan's got the hot start, the shirt tear, they're fighting on the outside. Hogan sends Undertaker into the steps. Then back in the ring, Taker takes over. Hogan takes his own bandana off. And boy, you don't hear Jerry Lawler cackling about his hairline saying, look at his head! Taker eventually starts going for Hogan's leg for a while. Hogan starts coming back. He hits the boot, goes for the leg drop, but Taker moves and turns it into a half crab. Hogan ducks a boot and Taker's leg is caught in the ropes. And then this is an all-time moment. Hogan sandbags a chokeslam attempt by the Undertaker. He's barely able to get him up here. They do a pretty good job editing it on the rebroadcast here, but real ones remember. Hogan hems up, he hits the punches, the boot, the leg drop, but Undertaker kicks out. A minute later, Mr. McMahon shows up. Taker's got a chair. Hogan kicks it in Taker's face, hits another leg drop. McMahon distracts the referee. Hogan throws Vince into the ring, winds up, decks him one, then hits him with a leg drop. The Undertaker with a chair to the spine. Another chokeslam. The cover, the 3 count. The Undertaker wins and is the new undisputed champion. Then after the bell, just for good measure, Taker grabs a chair and drives it right into Hogan's throat. I give it 1 star out of 5, and well, it was fun while it lasted. You know, pretty forgettable match all told, with a pivotal spot in the match that is so bad, that was so poorly executed, they had to like make a drastic edit so you wouldn't see it, and the ending is pretty bland. It is crazy to think that they are planting the seeds for Hogan McMahon WrestleMania 19 this far back when you think about it. I mean, like I said, fun while it lasted. The moment of Hogan winning was fine, but they got to go back to business as usual, and you know, it was what it was. You know, Hogan got to have that last run, that last time as champion. He got to kind of like, you know, he helped usher the WWF into a brave new era in the 80s, and in a way he kind of does it again in 2002 by being the champion, the last WWF champion, the first WWE champion. So Hogan getting his little place in the history books is neat, but yeah, I think it was a fine time to end it. 1 month is enough. It's a very strong pay-per-view. It builds off so many things from like WrestleMania and Backlash and just makes everything so much better. It's especially at a time when a lot of the longer established and older talents are getting more broken down, getting a little less reliable, and so you have a lot of the younger talent really stepping up just in time. And so I think that this show is a really good representation of that. It is, I think, one of the stronger, I mean, as far as like, we're not in the Ruthless Aggression era yet, but in that initial draft era when they're still figuring things out, this is a pretty strong pay-per-view. But what did you think of Judgment Day, and how about this review? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and hit that bell icon for all the notifications. And folks, I told you a few months ago that I was on a mission, a very special mission for 2025, and that was to complete all the remaining WCW 2000 pay-per-views. Well, next time here on the channel, I'll be continuing that mission in grand form with the Great American Bash 2000. Oh yeah, I can't wait to look at this one. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.